The wind howled through the dark trees of Alaska as snowflakes drifted down, soft and silent. James Harlow sat by the fire in his small wooden cabin, sipping black coffee and reading a worn book. He liked it quiet. He had left the noise of war and cities far behind. Once a soldier in secret missions no one spoke about, now he lived alone, a forest ranger with scars both seen and hidden. That night, the stars above seemed to shift. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but then the sky split open not like lightning, not like anything natural. A tear appeared high above the earth, glowing red and purple like a wound in space itself, and something came through. He watched it fall, a smooth silver shape with sharp edges, falling fast but silent. It didn't crash. It simply disappeared behind the distant mountains. James stood outside his cabin, the cold forgotten, staring into the night. His instincts stirred, those old instincts from the battlefield. Whatever had come, it wasn't from Earth. Hours passed. The fire burned low. He didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m, a knock came at his door. One knock, then another. He reached for the old pistol he kept near, then slowly opened the door, and there she stood. She was tall, wrapped in a dark cloak dusted with snow. Her skin shimmered pale blue under the moonlight. Her eyes glowed softly with silver light. Her face was almost human, but not quite, just different enough to make his breath catch. In her arms she held a boy. The child looked about 6 years. Old, wrapped tightly against the cold, his small head resting on her shoulder. James stared, confused, uncertain if he was dreaming. She looked into his eyes and spoke with a strange accent, her voice soft but steady. "You don't know me," she said, "but this child, he is yours." James froze. The air seemed to vanish. The woman stepped inside slowly and closed the door behind her. She pulled back the child's hood, and James saw the boy's face clearly. His heart stopped, the eyes, wide and gray, with the same sharp focus James had seen in his own mirror. Many times, the jawline, the hair, it was like looking at a younger version of himself. James stepped back, shaking his head. "What is this?" he whispered. The woman lowered her hood. Her face was tired, her expression full of fear, pain, and something else. Hope. She repeated her words. "He's your son. I came across that stars to find you." James didn't speak. He couldn't. His mind spun with questions, doubts, memories long buried. 10 years ago, he had been part of a mission no one remembered. A trip through a wormhole, a place the world never acknowledged. He came back broken and missing time. No one had ever told him what happened during those lost days. But now here was the answer standing before him in the snow, holding a boy with his eyes. The fire crackled behind them. Outside, the wind grew stronger. James still didn't move. He just stared at the boy as the truth settled in his chest like thunder. Something had followed her here, something from the stars, and it was only just beginning. James sat at the edge of the fireplace, his hands shaking as the strange woman spoke. Her name was Alira, and her words felt like pieces of a dream he couldn't fully remember. She told him everything, how they met on her homeworld, Torellin. During a time of war, he had been there on a mission, part of something called Project Horizon, a secret operation hidden from all records. 10 years ago, he was one of the few chosen to pass through a wormhole discovered near Jupiter. The mission was short, or so they thought. But when James returned, he had no memory of the days he was gone. He told him it was a side effect of the trip, and the project was shut down. He accepted it. What else could he do? Now, Alira filled in the blanks. She had been a scientist working for her people when her city was attacked during a civil conflict. James had crashed near her lab and saved her life, shielding her from falling debris and dragging her through fire. She had never seen a being like him, so fierce, so full of spirit. He was injured, lost, and stranded, but instead of fear, he showed kindness. They hid together for days, helped each other survive. And in those quiet nights between danger and silence, something grew between them. Not just survival, but something more human, connection, warmth, and eventually love. Then the call came to return him to his world. Alira begged to go with him, but the gate was unstable. They said it would collapse forever. James was pulled back, unconscious, memories scrambled by the journey. And she was left behind, with a secret growing inside her. She had their child Kalen, raised him in hiding. For 6 years, she kept him safe. But something was wrong. Kale was stronger than other children, smarter too, and sometimes things moved when he got angry. Small things at first, then bigger. It wasn't just strength, it was power. Lyra studied him in secret and found traces of both Tyrellan and human DNA. A perfect blend. Too perfect. That's when the Valari ascendancy noticed. The Valari were not her people. They were rulers, conquerors, a powerful empire that had absorbed many planets, including hers. They believed hybrids like Kale could unlock mental abilities they had long lost in their own species. They wanted to take him, study him, break him, so she ran, stole a small ship, cloaked it using old rebel tech, and followed the old signal from Project Horizon, the only clue to Earth's location. It took her years of hiding, running, and near-death escapes, but she finally found Earth. She found James. As she finished, Kale stirred in his sleep, curling against her side. James looked at him, feeling something strange twist inside. Fear, yes, but also something else. Strange warmth, like a fire just beginning to burn. He didn't remember her, not fully. No. But something in him felt the truth. He believed her. And then Alira said the words that chilled him. "They followed me," she whispered. "They're coming. Earth is in danger." James stared at her, then out the window at the dark sky. His quiet life had just been shattered. Not just by the truth of a child he never knew, but by a storm approaching from across the stars. And he knew one thing with perfect clarity. If they were coming for his son, they'd have to go through him first. Days passed with tension thick in the air, and the world slowly began to notice that something was wrong. Satellites above Earth stopped working one by one, blinking out without reason. Space stations went silent, communication lines crackled, and global leaders blamed it on solar storms. But James knew better. He watched the skies each night with growing unease, waiting for what Alira had warned him about. Then they arrived. Massive dark ships like floating knives in the sky slipped silently into orbit. They didn't flash weapons or fire shots. They just hovered as if watching. No one could explain them. Telescopes caught shapes too large, too strange to belong to any known technology. And then came the message one that interrupted broadcasts all over the world. The language was sharp, metallic, but quickly translated through Earth's best. A is, "Turn over the hybrid child or your world will burn." Else. That was it. Cold and final. Panic swept across cities. Governments tried to keep order, but fear was stronger. People protested, screamed for answers, blamed each other. Military jets patrolled the skies. Nations pointed weapons at the stars. Yet Earth was unprepared for something like this. Lyra explained to the UN Council that the ships belonged to the Valari Ascendancy, one of the most ruthless empires in the galaxy. They did not bluff. They did not negotiate. If they wanted Kale, they would not stop until they had him more, until Earth was ashes. Many leaders thought handing the boy over was the logical choice. One child for the survival of billions, they said. But James stood up, full of fury. "He's not just a child. It's my son." He stared down the room, voice steady. "And we don't trade lives on Earth." Some agreed with him, others didn't. But there was no time to argue. Lyra revealed the last secret, something James had buried deep in his mind without knowing. Project Horizon hadn't just brought him back with alien knowledge, brought technology, designs, coordinates. Earth had quietly built something in secret, using what James had returned with, a fleet hidden on the dark side of the moon, powered by alien engines and human resolve. It was called Project Phoenix. Half complete, unstable, and dangerous, but Earth's only hope. The plan was clear. Get to the moon base. Protect Kale. Wake the Phoenix fleet. James, Alira, and a small team of trusted soldiers were chosen. They would launch from a hidden base in Alaska in a stolen Tyrellan ship Alira had used to reach Earth. But even before they reached the launch pad, Valari drones attacked. Fast and deadly, the black machines swarmed from the skies, hunting Kale. With perfect aim, James fought like the soldier he used to be, shooting down one drone after another as Alira shielded the boy. The ship lifted into the air just in time, engines roaring. As they broke through the atmosphere, James looked down at Earth one last time, feeling a deep ache in his chest. Home was no longer safe. War had come. The only way to protect it now was to carry the fight into space and finish what Project Horizon had started. As the stolen ship pierced the black sky and entered orbit, James gripped the edge of his seat, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Earth shrank behind them, its blue glow dimming with distance, but his thoughts stayed locked on what they were leaving. Behind millions of lives, his cabin in the woods, a planet on the edge of destruction. Alira piloted the craft with calm hands, guiding them through space debris and thick clouds of satellite wreckage. Kale sat between them, wide-eyed but silent. Watching everything, he understood the danger even without being told. His tiny hand clutched James's sleeve, and that small grip felt stronger than any order James had ever followed in war. They passed the edge of Earth's satellite layer and drifted near the far side of the moon, where the darkness stretched, deep and endless. There, hidden under ancient craters and rock, waited the secret that had been built in silence the Phoenix fleet. Massive silver structures rested below the moon's surface, shielded by cloaking fields. Human engineers had used blueprints locked in James's memory, activated years ago during a post-mission medical scan. James had never known what they did with the data. Now he saw the result. Hundreds of ships rested in a long, underground hangar, sleek, sharp, and glowing faintly with strange light. They weren't like anything on Earth. They were built to fight in space, with alien thrusters and weapons powered by fusion cores. Some were unfinished, others looked ready. When James and Alira landed, a small group of soldiers and engineers rushed to meet them. Commander Ruiz, head of Project Phoenix, saluted James. "We thought this day might come," she said. "We didn't think it'd come so soon." Time was short. Scouts had seen Valari forces moving closer and battleships were forming a blockade around the moon. Earth's last defense would not be from below, but from here. Ruiz explained the mission. They would launch the finished ships, punch through the blockade, and strike the Valari command ship before it could send landing units to Earth. It was a suicide run, but if they could destroy the Valari mind core, the command AI, it would cripple the enemy's control. James was handed command of the lead warship, the Horizon, named after the old project that started everything. It was fast, armed with plasma railguns and a gravity blade cannon, new weapons born from human imagination, and alien tech. As he stood on the bridge of the ship, watching the other crews prepare, James felt the full weight of what was coming. He wasn't just fighting for Kale anymore. He was fighting for Earth. He was fighting for all of them. Alira stayed with Kale in the ship's core, a chamber lined with protective shielding. Kale was the key to the enemy's plan, and the Valari would stop at nothing to get him. So James made a choice. He would lead the charge himself. He would draw fire away from the base and protect his son the only way he knew how, by going straight into the storm. As the fleet launched, a low hum filled the chamber, followed by silence as the moon's surface opened. One by one, the Phoenix ships rose into space like arrows fired into the dark. The moment they broke free, alarms screamed. The Valari had noticed. Black ships swarmed in from every angle, twice the size, triple the speed. James locked his eyes. On the command ship at the heart of the enemy line, "No turning back," he said into the comms. "Today, humanity shows them what we're made of." Engines roared and Earth's first space fleet flew into battle. The Phoenix fleet soared through the stars like a silver arrow tearing through night. And James stood at the helm of the Horizon, heart pounding as alarms flashed, and the enemy came into view. The Valari ships were massive, dark like burned metal, their shapes smooth and curved, almost like living creatures. They moved together like a swarm, forming a wall between the human fleet and the command ship deep behind their lines. James gave the order, and the battle began. Lasers streaked through space like bolts of red lightning. Missiles burst into fireballs, lighting up the void. The horizon shook as it took a hit on the left side, but James didn't flinch. He barked commands, shifting formation, leading the charge forward while smaller ships flanked the Volari from above and below. The Phoenix fleet fought harder than anyone expected. The new weapons hummed with deadly power, ripping through enemy armor with glowing beams. Plasma railguns fired with a high-pitched whine, and gravity torpedoes folded enemy hulls inward like paper crushed in a fist. But the Volari adapted fast. They split into groups, circling the human ships, firing with brutal speed and precision. One human cruiser exploded in a burst of flames and silence, pieces of metal spinning off into the dark. Another was sliced in half by a Volari blade beam that looked like a streak of moonlight. Wow! James growled under his breath and pushed the horizon. Harder, he couldn't slow down. Behind him, Kale and Alira were counting on him. The Earth was counting on him. Alira called from the inner chamber, her voice tense. Kale's power is reacting to the fight. He's sensing something, coming closer. James didn't have time to ask what she meant. A massive Volari warship dropped from above like a falling mountain. It fired a shockwave that shattered to nearby ships and headed straight for the horizon. James's hands flew over the controls, spinning the ship, dodging the blast by inches. He fired all cannons at once, scoring a direct hit to the warship's engine. And the giant ship cracked open like a broken egg, its burning core exposed to space. More ships followed, dozens of them, as if the Volari were growing desperate. And then James realized why. "They're not just fighting to stop us," he said aloud. "They're trying to distract us. Something else is moving." "Commander." Ruiz's voice broke through the comms. "Confirmed. A second Volari fleet is circling the moon. They're heading toward the surface toward Kale." James felt his blood turn to ice. The battle was a trap. They had never wanted to destroy the Phoenix fleet. They only wanted it far enough away from the boy. "Get me back to the moon," he shouted. Now Ruiz argued, but James overrode her. He turned the horizon around, engines screaming as the ship spun through burning wreckage. Two enemy ships tried to follow, but James cut them down with precise cannon fire, his fury sharpening every move. As he raced back toward the moon, he saw flashes of light near its surface. Maul battles breaking out as defense turrets tried to hold off the second enemy force. Inside the ship, Illyra was shielding Kale with her own body. The boy's eyes glowed faintly now, his breath shallow, hands trembling. "They're calling to him," Illyra whispered, holding his face. "They're trying to control him." James didn't know how it was possible, but he could see it. Kale wasn't just being hunted, he was being pulled, his mind targeted by something deep and ancient in the Volari mind core. "Not today," James growled. He pushed the ship to its limit, every part shaking as they crossed the void and dropped toward the moon. He could already see enemy drop pods slamming into the lunar surface, dozens of them spilling out dark forms with glowing blades. Soldiers of the Volari. James had fought wars before, but nothing like this. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a father fighting for his child, a man standing between a sleeping world and the monsters at its door. As the moon's surface rushed up to meet them, and the final wave of enemy troops moved to take Kale, James locked eyes with Illyra. "We end this now," he said. Then he picked up his rifle, strapped on the last of his armor, and stormed toward the airlock, ready to face whatever hell waited beyond. The airlock doors opened, and James charged out onto the moon's surface, his boots slamming into the dusty ground as the sky above flashed with streaks of fire and light. The enemy drop pods had landed hard, cracking the surface and leaving dark scars in the rock. Volari soldiers swarmed from them, tall, armored creatures with sharp blades and glowing eyes, moving like shadows. James didn't stop. He fired his plasma rifle in short bursts, each shot hitting with brutal force. His armor, a blend of human steel and alien shielding, absorbed hits that would have killed any normal soldier. Around him, Phoenix troops joined the fight, some in exosuits, others in lunar tanks. But the Volari were strong faster than expected, smarter too. They moved in packs, using mind links to outmaneuver defenses, cutting through lines with smooth precision. James pressed forward, fighting through smoke and dust, knowing Kale was behind him in a hidden bunker, guarded only by Elira and a few remaining soldiers. The enemy knew it too. A new wave of Volari dropped in, this time with heavier gear floating. Walkers, beam cannons, and shield units. The battlefield turned into chaos. Screams filled the combs. Soldiers went down. The shield wall around the bunker began to flicker. James saw it all and kept going, his heart pounding with more than fear. He wasn't just a soldier now. He was a father. Nothing would get past him. A Volari beast leaped from behind a crater, its jaws wide and glowing. James met it head-on, blasting its leg out from under it, then driving his blade into its chest. The creature screeched and fell, smoke pouring from its mouth. He didn't stop. He moved like a force of nature, shouting orders, covering his men, dragging the wounded behind cover. Each second counted. Each breath was war. Inside the bunker, Illyra was holding Kale close. The boy trembled, eyes closed, forehead slick with sweat. His mind was being pulled again, threads of energy stretching toward the sky, toward something huge and invisible above them. Illyra could feel it now, to a mind bigger than the moon itself. The Volari mind core was near. It had found them, and it was calling to Kale like a song. She activated a barrier around him, pouring all her energy into the shield. But it wouldn't last long. The door burst open, and James stumbled inside, covered in ash and blood, panting hard. "They're coming," Illyra said. James nodded. "Let them come." He reloaded, checked the shield levels, and looked at his son. Kale opened his eyes slowly. They glowed gold.
"Dad,"
he whispered. "I feel everything." James knelt beside him. "You're strong.
"Ow."
You're my son. They want you to be a weapon. You don't have to be." Kale's face twisted in pain. "I don't want to hurt people." "Then don't," James said. "Use it to protect. Use it for good." Kale nodded, tears falling, and his glow brightened. Suddenly, the bunker shook as a massive blast hit the shield wall. The Volari command unit had arrived. It stood taller than a tank, shaped like a spider made of metal and fire. Its limbs slammed into the rock, its eyes burning white. Behind it, hundreds of soldiers marched in silence. James stood up, gripped his rifle, and looked at Illyra. She placed a small glowing cube in Kale's hands. "Focus on this," she said. "Softly, it's your core. It will help you control the power." Kale closed his hands around it, and the cube pulsed. James and Illyra stood side by side at the entrance, watching the enemy descend like a dark wave. "Together," she said. James nodded. "Always." And then the final battle began. Bullets, beams, and blades filled the air. The Volari pushed forward, overwhelming the last of the Phoenix troops, breaking through defenses. But James and Illyra held the line. Every time they were pushed back, they rose again, standing in front of their son like living shields. Bloodied, bruised, but unbroken. And as the command unit stepped forward to deliver the final blow, Kale stood. His eyes were no longer gold, they were bright white. Energy poured from his body, lifting the dust around him. The mind core tried to control him, but Kale didn't break. He reached into the air, gripped something invisible, and tore it apart. The sky above cracked like glass, and a scream filled the stars. The mind core shattered. The Volari dropped their weapons and froze. Then one by one they fell, empty and lifeless. James caught Kale before he collapsed. The battlefield went silent. The war was not over yet, but the tide had turned. Earth would live. And Kale, the boy they came to take, had saved them all. Smoke floated above the broken surface of the moon like drifting ghosts, and the silence that followed the battle felt heavier than any war cry. James sat on a stone near the bunker entrance, his armor cracked and scorched, his rifle out of charge, his body aching from every wound. Yet he didn't care about the pain. His eyes were fixed on Kale, who lay resting on a soft platform made from old supply blankets. The boy's small chest rose and fell slowly, peacefully, the strange glow in his body now calm and quiet. Illyra stood nearby, her silver armor darkened with soot, her hands folded tight as she watched the distant sky. James didn't need to ask what she was thinking. Everyone on the moon knew the Valari had fallen back, but they also knew it wasn't over. Without the Mind Core, the invaders had lost their control, but not their hunger. Somewhere out there, far beyond the moon, deep in the shadows of space, the rest of the Valari Ascendancy was still watching. They would regroup. They would strike again. Lyra turned to James and said softly, "The child's power reached across the galaxy. They felt it. That's why they're not attacking now. They're afraid." James looked at her, unsure if that was good news or bad. He had seen fear before. Fear didn't always stop war. Sometimes it made enemies more desperate. Still, for the first time since this nightmare began, there was a spark of hope. Down below, Earth had sent up messages. Celebrations had begun in cities around the world. People cheered the human fleet's bravery, their survival, and most of all, the boy who had saved them. Some even called him a miracle. Others called him dangerous. That frightened James more than anything else. He had seen it before, how quickly people turned from heroes to threats when fear got too loud. Commander Ruiz met with them in the command tent near the edge of the landing zone. She laid out a plan. Earth wanted Kale brought back to a special research base. They said it was for protection, but James saw the truth in their words. They wanted to study him, maybe even control him. Lyra's jaw tightened, and James felt rage boiling inside him. "He's not a weapon," James said, voice hard as steel. "He's my son." Ruiz didn't argue, but the pressure was growing. Political leaders, generals, even corporate powers, everyone wanted a piece of the child who had turned the tide of war. James knew they couldn't stay on the moon forever, but he also couldn't hand Kale over to people who saw him as a tool. That night, under the stars, James sat with Kale as the boy woke. Kale blinked up at him, his voice weak. "Did we win?" James smiled a little, brushing Kale's hair back. "We're still here. That's something." Kale turned his head and looked at the stars. "I saw them. All of them. The Valari. The other worlds. Some are afraid. Some are angry, but some were sad." James frowned. Sad. He didn't want to fight. They were forced, controlled. Kale looked at his father. "I felt it when I broke the Mind Core. It didn't just stop the Valari here. It freed others. Far away." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes wide with sudden understanding. The signal, the control field. He didn't just destroy it, he reversed it, sent freedom back through their network. James stood slowly. "They'll come for him again, to stop him from doing it again." Lyra nodded, or to silence the hope he created. There was only one answer now. They couldn't hide on Earth. They couldn't run forever. James looked at his son, then at Lyra. "We take the fight to them. We find the ones who were freed. Build something bigger, stronger. Defense that doesn't just protect Earth, but every world the Valari have hurt." Lyra smiled at that. "Rebellion." James nodded. "Led by a father, protected by a mother, empowered by a child who changed everything." The next morning, under the pale sunlight of the moon, James, Lyra, and Kale boarded the horizon once again. The Phoenix fleet, repaired and reforged, rose behind them. This time they weren't fleeing. They were heading deeper into the stars. Not as a broken crew, but as the beginning of something new.
Ow.
A force built not on fear, but on love, fire, and the will to protect. Stars stretched across the black sky like scattered fire, and the horizon moved among them, no longer as a lone ship, but as the heart of something much greater. James stood at the forward observation deck, arms folded, his eyes fixed on the path. Ahead, behind him, ships once separated by fear, politics, and borders now flew side by side, human vessels. Alien cruisers from freed Valari colonies, even old rebel craft once hunted by the Ascendancy. A new alliance had begun to form, one built from the cracks left by war, held together by something stronger than treaties: trust. It hadn't been easy. The first contacts with the freed Valari had been tense. They were not used to speaking freely or even thinking for themselves after years under mind control. Their ships were old, their systems broken, and their people confused. But Kale had changed that. Wherever they went, the child reached out not with words, but with his strange gift. He didn't force anything. He simply touched the minds around him and showed them freedom. Some were afraid, others cautious, but many listened. Worlds that had once bowed to the ascendancy began to resist. Secret bases opened their gates. Hidden scientists shared forbidden tech. Survivors of crushed rebellion stepped out of shadows. James watched it all and couldn't help but feel pride, not just as a commander, but as a father. His son had become a symbol, not a god, not a weapon. Child who had suffered, survived, and chose to protect instead of destroy. Illyra stood beside James, her gaze strong and steady. She had changed too. No longer just a warrior or a guardian, she had become a bridge between two species, two ways of life. Many of the new Alliance leaders trusted her more than anyone else, and she carried that weight with quiet grace. Still, the enemy was not gone. Deep in the heart of the Valari Empire, the last mind core remained. Hidden in a fortress world called Thralian, it was the source of the first control signal, the root of all the chains. Intelligence said the High Ascendants were gathering there, rebuilding, planning a final wave. If they succeeded, they would create a new control field, faster and wide enough to cover half the galaxy. The Alliance had one chance. They had to strike first. The plan was simple and dangerous. The human fleet would draw the enemy out by faking an assault on one of their minor factories. Meanwhile, the Horizon and a small team of elite ships would jump behind enemy lines and hit Thralian directly. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. James called his crew together before the final jump. He looked at the faces that had followed him from Earth to Hell and back. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, alien commanders, and Kale, now standing. Taller, stronger, though still a boy. "We may not all make it home," James said, voice calm. "But if we don't do this, none of our homes will matter. They'll come for everything. For everyone. We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we love peace, and we're tired of watching monsters take it away." They jumped, and hell followed. Thralian was surrounded by black stars and defense grids that burned anything that moved. The moment the Horizon dropped, out of warp, it was met with waves of drones and carrier ships. Explosions lit the sky like red suns. James ordered full forward. Fighters launched, shields flared, and they carved a hole through the madness. One by one, Allied ships took hits some. Destroyed, some crippled, but they pushed forward. Inside the command room, Kale sat in the center, hands on the floor, eyes closed. His mind reached out again, not to destroy, but to weaken the control web. The mind core felt him, and it screamed. A wave of force blasted across the battlefield. Ships spun, systems failed, weapons shut down. But Kale didn't break. Illyra knelt beside him, whispering, reminding him of who he was. James took the final step. He piloted the Horizon straight through the storm and into the heart of Thralian. They crashed into the mind core chamber. The core stood before them, pulsing like a living sun, glowing with cold blue fire. The High Ascendants were there tall, monstrous figures with minds like poison. They moved to kill Kale. James and Illyra fought like fury itself, blades and rifles flashing, protecting the boy with every breath. And then Kale stood. Light poured from him like a sunrise. Not fire, not death, just pure, honest light. It struck the mind core. The Ascendants screamed. The tower shook. The core cracked. With one final shout, Kale sent a wave of thought through. The stars, a wave of freedom. The mind core exploded. Across the galaxy, Valari ships stopped. Slaves lifted their heads. Chains broke. James caught Kale as he collapsed, the boy smiling softly. "I did it," he whispered. "You did," James said, tears in his eyes. "You really did, and so the war ended. Not with fire, but with choice. The galaxy was free, and humanity had not just survived, it had led the way."